All right, I'd like to call this special meeting of the West Dallas South Milwaukee School Board to order. Suzette, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Ustrup,
Here.
Mr. Keller,
Here.
Mrs. Carr was planning on joining remotely. Mrs. Carr, are you there?
I don't see her yet.
I'm checking. We'll come back to her. Mr. Sickich.
Present.
Mr. Burns.
Present.
Mrs. Kaiser. Here. Ms. Steele. Here. Mrs. Justum. Brandon, let me know if she joins, and President Lee.
Here. All right, so today we're going to start right away with public comments. And so as a reminder, each person has 3 minutes to address the board. You must start by saying your name and your address. We do have a 30-minute time limit on public comments. So in the interest of time, if you are coming up to say something that is similar to the person before you, if you want to say, I agree with that person, as opposed to saying your own statement, you can do that. If you choose not to, that's fine. But based on the number of people that we have signed up right now, we will not be able to get through all the public comments within 30 minutes, just so everyone is aware. They will be taken in the order that they were signed up on the online form. No board member cannot, the board cannot answer any questions, respond to any statements that you have, and if there's anything that needs to be responded to, we can do that at the next regular board meeting. So without any further ado, yes, Jeff.
I'd like to make a motion to move to change the our normal rules and allow everybody that's here a chance to speak.
So I would like to remind you, I hear that motion, but I would like to remind that we do have students waiting for our upcoming, so I just want to make sure.
I think the people.
So
waiting to
once we
speak
get to
should
the
be heard.
30 minutes, then we can make that motion.
Okay.
That's the time that we would make that we would love to do that. Okay. All right. So without further ado, Miss Janine Bagley.
Janine Bagley, 2826 South 83rd Street. I'm a parent of 3 elementary age children in the district, all who attend General Mitchell Elementary School.
Miss Bagley, you still need to wear your mask. Thank you.
I would like to begin by saying that I am against the mandatory mask mandate that you are forcing upon us. We have to decide what is best for our children in every aspect of their lives. So this should be our decision and not yours. I do not believe that you as a school board have the children's best interests at heart. If you do not remove the mandatory mask mandate effective today, when will you? When COVID is no longer a threat? That will never happen, and you know that. Again, you need to put the children's best interests first over your own political views. COVID is less of a threat to children than accidents or the common flu. Among states reporting to the American Academy of Pediatrics in a recent study, children were 0 to 0.23% of all COVID deaths, with 3 states reporting 0 child deaths. In fact, according to the Wisconsin Department of Health Services, Wisconsin reported only 9 deaths between the age of 1 and 19. Children are suffering from not being able to breathe freely under facial masks, complaining of headaches, and that's not even to mention the psychological stress, anxiety, and depression that go hand in hand with this. But apparently the school board doesn't care about all the psychological stresses being placed on our children. So let's try another approach, one that has greatly affected my children as they are younger. The human face provides many important cues for recognition of both individuals and emotions. By forcing children to cover the lower half of their face with masks, the school board is making children lose the experience of mimicking expressions, which is an essential tool for nonverbal communication, making positive emotions such as laughing and smiling less recognizable, and greatly reducing the ability of our younger children, which would be my K-4 child, to communicate. The school board seems to have forgotten that children rely heavily on facial cues to interact and respond appropriately to teachers and peers. It is important that we all remember that early childhood is a crucial period in developing culture, language, and social skills. I will leave the board with this thought. My child in K-4 has never seen his teacher without her mask on. He has never experienced the pure joy of having his teacher smile at him. None of the children in K-4 have ever had that experience. It is crucial to the well-being of our children that we allow the mask option to be a parent's choice and not a school board choice. Unmask our children now. Thank you.
I'd like to remind everyone that we don't have cheering after each comment because that will eat more into our time. Thank you very much. All right, Miss Kelly Mauser. Can't have someone by another name.
Kelly Mauser, 819 South 90th Street. You are a school board, you are not doctors. You have no right to make medical decisions for the whole district. 2 years ago, it was a crisis. Nobody knew what was going on. We accepted your mandates. 2 years later, we all know what we need to do to keep our own families safe. We have asked for records to show the proof of the effectiveness of masks. We got answer of we don't have that data. In August of 2021, you ignored the medical director's advice advising against masks, where he also states that it's an unusual event for transmission from child to adult. And he also states there are multiple studies describing negative physical and emotional effects of masking children all day long. Completely ignoring medical director's advice, you have no data to prove these points. No comparison of the effectiveness of masks against the known issues of wearing masks all day. How did you make a informed medical decision when you have no data? Without that information, I don't get how you do that. No? Are you gonna pay my medical premiums? Can I hold you liable for your decisions? We are the parents. We make medical decisions, not a board. If you want to continue to live in free, that's your in fear, that is your choice. But to continue to make my child suffer for your delusional fears of a virus that you have a 99.98% survival rate of, it needs to stop. And it needs to stop now.
Thank you. Ms. Tracy Walkwhite.
Tracy Rockwhite, 1636 South.
I'm sorry, Brandon, can you please switch over the audio?
Oh, sorry. Are you ready? Are you ready? Can you hear me?
We can hear
We
you.
can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Tracy Rockwhite, 1636 South 52nd Street. I have two young kids at Pershing Elementary. I'm speaking up against the mandatory masking. I believe making it optional is best for everyone. It's now pretty widely accepted that the N95 or the KN95 masks do in fact protect the wearer. And schools are now providing those masks to students and staff that want them. As of last Thursday, we have pulled our kids from school and we will not be returning them until it is made optional. We have been following the rules this year for more than 5 months, but we are now teaching our kids that the valuable lesson that the right thing to do is not always the easy thing to do. I could go on and on with this, but I will end with this. Every morning at school, my kids would stand up and say the Pledge of Allegiance and also the Pershing Promise, which includes this line, I have the power to make safe choices. So let's give that power back to them and to their families. Thank you.
Hello, thank you for letting me speak today. I have 4 kids in the. school
Mr. Edgett, if you could just, your name and then your
Oh,
address.
my name's Rick Edgett. My address is 904 South 112th Street, West Dallas, Wisconsin. So I have 4 boys in the system, and they've all been, we've all been playing the rules. We've been kind of going along with it when we had a pandemic at our heels. But at this point, it's been done for a while. I mean, we have what, 341 other school districts in our state alone that I think are unmasked at this point. So it's just kind of incredible that we're still doing this at this with the information at our dispenser, so it's incredible. Sorry, I'm a little worked up here, waiting for this moment for a long time, and now I'm kind of coming up empty, but this is just, it's hitting home everywhere. My kids, the facial expression thing, that's a big deal. The interaction between fellow, schoolmates to know how they're feeling and be able to, even in high school, it's a big deal, I believe. So I think we need to get rid of the mask or let it be optional. I'm all for people wearing a mask. If you want to wear a mask, more power to you. Wear 5 masks. But I mean, to let these kids suffer like they are is not right. And we've gone long enough to deal with this. So please just give our kids an opportunity to live their life and be educated and to maybe breathe a little freely. This is America, for goodness sakes. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. John Malling.
My name is John Malling, 3850 South Pole Drive, New Berlin, Wisconsin. You're very familiar with me. I look around this room and an N95 mask ties around the back of your head. I don't see any of them. There's one. Good. I was this morning, Hoda Kotb on the Today Show played a clip from Dr. Fauci on TV that he said in 2020, quote, "The cloth masks you are wearing do not protect you from the virus," unquote. I was here in June of 2021 and presented the following statistics. An N95 mask is the only effective mask against the virus. A noted United Kingdom physician noted, cloth mask versus the virus are like trying to keep dust out of a horse corral using chicken wire. That's the size difference. There was a 50-year specialist dealing with respiratory equipment stated, trying to keep the virus out of you with the cloth mask is like shooting marbles through a chain link fence. The marble is the virus, the chain link fence is your mask. These are facts that were science in June, and they're the same facts and science now. They're statistics. They're true. They're accurate. And I can tell you they're true. It's been 8 months ago since June that I repeated these statistics. They're as true now as they were in June. And it is time to follow the science. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Rhonda Jones.
Hi, I'm Rhonda Jones. I live at 1457 South 86th Street. When will this board ever admit wrongdoing? The things this district has been doing in the past and the present are not working. You have probably what you think is a fringe minority asking you to make masks optional. You are very wrong. I recently sat with a mom whose son has epilepsy, and just the way that he has to hold his head up to keep that mask on can trigger a seizure per his doctor's observations. I sat with another mom whose child has gotten impetigo many times, a bacterial infection directly related to masking 8 hours a day per her pediatrician's observations. I've already told you about my kid, so unless you weren't listening, you should already know. One of the things we all have in common is that our children's pediatricians have recommended that they don't wear masks. But during the school day, we have to go against their recommendations in favor of yours. Does that make sense that you would know more about our children's health than their own doctor? Have any of you sat with parents such as me to truly understand why we are upset at your overreach and intrusion into the healthcare decisions of our children? It's time to stop playing games with our children in the name of safety. You are in the business of academics, not healthcare. The parents of this district aren't the only ones tired of not being heard. Your teachers are equally as tired. It should scare you that you have teachers who will be leaving at the end of this school year, and I know that as fact. It should alarm you that you've had teachers quit in the middle of this school year. It should terrify you that our district
Got
is the
invited to
bottom
the
10% in the entire
Study
state.
Carry Foundation party.
And with all of your equity
They have a
preaching,
bar down
please
in
don't
the
try to
basement.
blame this on minority or poor or disabled students. This is a failure of the administration on so many levels. Why on earth is there every other committee but there's no teaching and there's no learning committee to focus on proven curriculum and teaching methods. This board has spent more time in your COVID mitigation measures than our kids' academics, and for that,
Well,
you have a district
there's
with
Culver's.
53.1% below basic proficiency in math
what else
this
is
year.
around here?
That's a drop of 18.5%. Our kids deserve better, and it's unacceptable. I'm betting most parents in this district have
Those
no
made me
idea
watch.
of the poor
listen to a
numbers
school board
that our
meeting.
district is riddled with. And if they
Wouldn't
were
you-
paying attention, I bet they'd be embarrassed.
There's a lot of public
With an
comment.
extremely low caseload in our community, it is time to end this. And I suggested at the beginning of the year to go mask optional. And if the cases were elevated, then it would be pertinent.
You went in my room.
There are other districts that have been mask optional all year and
I was like, he said he was gonna lay in everyone's bed. I'm like, that
The
bastard.
hypocrisy
I
of
was
this
just
board.
messing.
There's children
not that
sitting behind
freaky
taking
about
off
it.
their masks for one quick picture. and
10
we're told-
seconds, Ms. Jones.
We're told to leave them alone. It goes both ways.
No
Leave them
kidding.
alone.
House and Barlow. Yeah, they're like, our bar is packed and ready to go. I'm like, geez Louise.
Okay, I can't do anything about that.
I'm starting to finally hack some shit up, so.
Oh, wonderful.
Next, we have
That's real cool.
Ms. Leah Zacharias.
What do all these light switches truly?
Hello, I'm Leah Zacharias, 1958 South 93rd Street. Our children have been undergoing COVID-19 mitigation measures for 2 years now. Their emotional, social, and physical well-being have been sacrificed. These children have paid the highest price. Families should have always held the responsibility to make decisions for their children's health. It's time to give that responsibility back to the families. It's time to end the mandatory masks in West Dallas, West Milwaukee schools, along with ending the close contact quarantine of healthy kids. Is your next public comment, Irela?
Yes.
My name is Irela Zacharias, 1958 South 93rd Street. I do not want to wear a mask. I do not like them. I am healthy. I cannot see faces. I cannot see my teacher smile.
Thank you. Ms. Stephanie Marquez.
Stephanie Marquez, 2246 South 72nd Street. I stand here tonight to advocate for my children and other children of our district. I would like to focus solely on mask wearing. Upon looking at other districts that surround us and how they have fared with making mask optional, I say they have done very well. These districts have evolved with the times and remain open and have not seen surges that can be tied to non-mask wearing. Yet here we are in West Dallas, still stuck in 2020. My husband works for a college in the area where masks have been optional since January. They have remained open the entire time as well and have not had to close down or make masks mandatory since then. I think we all know that masks do not guarantee the prevention of COVID, and most of them do not provide protection that is even noteworthy. A study in 2021 showed that a basic cotton mask only protected the wearer 17% to 27%. A surgical mask had 47 to 50% protection, and even securely sealed N95 masks are only known to protect at best 79 to 90%. The key word here is securely. Have you seen how our kids wear their masks? Now let's talk about facial expressions. A study done in 2001 found that children with stronger face reading skills tend to perform better academically. I think that if we look at the report card percentages in our district right now, we might see how that study is accurate due to the fact that our children do not see their teachers' mouths or their full facial expressions. Children, especially younger ones, need to be able to see these expressions for their emotional development. In 2009, a study found that children who have more trouble identifying emotion in faces are more likely to have peer problems and learning difficulties. They are at higher risk for externalizing behavioral problems, and they are more likely to engage in acts of overaggression. Face reading skills develop throughout childhood and even adolescence, and you have taken away 2 years of skill development for our children. Please focus on the issues at hand that are affecting our children way more than COVID is. Their education, their grades, their behaviors, due to 2 years of mask wearing. We talk about mental health all the time in our society, yet here in West Dallas, we fail to see just how much this has affected so many of our children. Anxiety and depression are real. I will not name any of my children, but one of them in particular changed a lot during the past 2 years. This child became withdrawn and felt defeated. They were once a straight A student, but their grades plummeted. And more than once I heard him say, "What's the point of doing this?" I'm asking you tonight to think about their well-being, mentally, emotionally, and physically,
10
and let
seconds.
us parents decide what is best for our children.
Thank you. Ms. Devin Ray.
Devin Ray, 1027 South 110th Street. I would like to start out by saying thank you to those of you who finally did listen to us, to our concerns, and understand that medical decisions should be a parent's decision. To the rest of you, it should never take this much. Emails from so many of us have gone ignored. It's not only disrespectful, but it's negligent given your position. Positions that were voted on by the very people that you are repeatedly ignoring. The blatant hypocrisy of this board, don't even get me started. It's undeniable. How is it acceptable for a board member to sit here and preach to us about the importance of requiring masks to protect others, right? But then allow their child to participate in full contact sports with unmasked competitors? If one way mask wearing is acceptable for sports, then it's acceptable for the classroom. The bottom line is you decide for your family, but give me the same respect to decide for mine. In case it hasn't been said enough, masks don't work. The district acknowledged this in writing in February 16th by saying, quote, "We have no responsive record that proves the effectiveness of mitigation of mitigating the spread of COVID-19 in our district by wearing masks. The boxes say right on them not to be used to prevent illness or disease. This is clear as day. Yet these are still acceptable suffocation devices in our schools. And if a parent believes that 2 layers of fabric between 2 people is what's necessary to make them feel protected, then they themselves should wear those 2 layers. Heck, wear 5 if that's what makes you feel safe. We as parents have the right to choose what type of preventative care we wish to partake in for our children. Those of you choosing to violate your oaths to uphold the Constitution should put your money where your mouth is. Let us not forget, surety bonds are legally required by board members. It is time that this district stop wasting time on useless mitigation protocols and deal with more important issues. How about academics? According to the DPI reports, our district is ranked in the bottom 10% of the state. Don't know about you, but that's unacceptable to me. The failure rate is alarmingly high, and that's something we should be focused on. Teachers should not be spending so much time catching up students that were discriminated against and forced to stay home while they were healthy because of their parents' medical decisions. Parents like me are the only experts that should be consulted when deciding on their own children's needs, their own children's symptoms, not vaccination statuses. The flu has a much higher negative impact on school-age children, yet we're not forced to keep them home for 10 days if they come into contact with someone who has the flu. If they develop
10
symptoms,
seconds.
we keep them home. And if they're healthy, they go to school. This virus shouldn't be any different. Let us be the parents and let our teachers teach.
Thank you. Ms. Marilyn Zagorski.
My name is Marilyn Zagorski, 827 South 93rd Street. This is a virus we will be living with forever. The time has come to stop pushing our children and staff. In the United States, we are free people. we are free to continue to wear a mask or have our children wear a mask. By the same token, we have the freedom as United States citizens to not wear a mask or for our children not to wear a mask. The choice must be put back in our hands and not of our overly aggressive school board. Our children should have the right, they should have the right and the ability to breathe fresh air and not stale air through a mask. Thank you.
Thank you. Max Learned.
Try to keep this as brief as possible. I know you have a long night and there's nasty weather coming, and much of this has already been said. During the last few
I'm
years.
sorry, could you just say your name?
Oh, I'm so sorry. Max Learned, 824 South 95th Street. During the last few years, we have learned a lot regarding the pandemic and used drastic measures to combat this virus. Quarantines, contact tracing, masking. But the most damaging to our children was the masking, especially the younger children, grades 1 through 4, and those with disabilities. A recent study from Stanford have shown that children who do wear masks often undermine the purpose of a mask by touching them repeatedly, taking them on and off. And I won't go into the negative factors because I'm sure that's already been listed. The reality is that widespread use of masks is not supported by science. Science does not flip-flop. However, politicians and government officials do. Science is pure. The mask hysteria, again, has driven unnecessary fear in the population. And now, whenever I see somebody driving alone in their car masked, I assume it's to keep them from licking the windows. Regardless of the recommendations that are presented by the CDC, and the CDC has lost their credibility along with Dr. Fauci, I would suggest that they close up shop and move down to Florida and open up a flip-flop shop. I implore you to invite my two best friends, common sense and critical thinking, to join you regarding these masking policies. And I'm just going to insert a little history lesson. Arabs over 2,000 years ago discovered that forcing people to cover their nose and mouth broke their will and their individuality and made them submissive. Think of what you're doing to this generation. The pandemic is walking out the door. Don't follow it. Thank you.
Aisha Siddiqui. Aisha, I'm sorry, I don't know if I'm saying the name correctly. Ayeesha Siddiqui. Listed as student representing West Dallas Central High School. She on Zoom. So no one here. I'm gonna skip that name for right now, just in interest of time. But if they're present, then we'll let them go next. If I can, so that's what I think. Let's try to see. So next I have Mr. Jeffrey Brister.
My name is Jeffrey Brister. I live at 1105 South 114th Street, West Dallas. My daughter goes to Walker. She's in 5K now. So she's been dealing with this. This was her first experience in school, was dealing with masks, and here we go again. We're still dealing with it. Quite often she comes home from school with headaches. Throughout the weekend, 0 headaches. This is becoming a major problem. I had to keep her home from school because of it several times. I've gotten a letter from the school saying we're almost crossing that limit on being tardy or not coming in because of these masks. There's no other reason why she gets headaches. She's 5 years old. 5-year-old kids don't get headaches unless they're other problems. She's a healthy young girl. She can't see her kids' faces at school. She has no idea who these kids are unless they go to a birthday party or something. Thank God for all these other friends and parents who want to get together outside of school, because that's the only way they get to see their friends' faces. My daughter has no idea what my teachers look like unless sometimes they don't wear their mask at the end of the day. It's just sad. You guys aren't following the science. You guys are just sitting up there, like playing on your computers, doing whatever you're probably told from people above. Why don't you listen to the parents? Listen to the true science. Let these kids breathe, for God's sakes. I mean, do you like wearing these masks? Sorry, I'm not supposed to ask you questions, but seriously, do you like wearing these masks? Do any of you like wearing these masks?
No! Doesn't bother me.
Probably doesn't. You know, enough is enough. Let's get back to basics. Start teaching our kids what they're supposed to do and not teaching them how to wear a mask. You know, enough, really enough. Do your jobs. We're pissed. We're tired. You see what's going around the world. People are standing up. It's you people that are not. Stop bending the knee, stand up. Do something for our children. Shame on you.
Thank you.
Miss Carolina Dietrich.
Hello, I'm Carolina Dietrich. I live at 2500 South 77th Street in West Dallas. What I have in front of me is a petition that was signed by the residents of West Dallas in 354 signatures. And I am here to share the part of the comments. This was in preparation for next week's meeting. Somehow the date got changed and our organization was then thwarted. And then also we have our 30-minute limit, which I hope you do motion and pass. So some of the comments that you'll have in here is there's 75,000 people can attend the Super Bowl without masks. I shouldn't be forced to wear one with less than 1,500. Another comment, if you want to wear a mask, wear one. But if I want to not wear one, I should be allowed. Everybody can decide for themselves whether or not to mask. We should not be forced to mask. Just want some sense of normalcy for my kiddos. Would love for them to be able to share a smile with their classmates and even their teachers. The masks they wear don't protect them anyways. Time to take them off. If parents want their kids to wear masks, they still can. Masks are outside of the KN95s ineffective, especially when coupled with incorrect wearing and face touching. Why do we go through the ludicrous exercise to torture our children just to make ourselves feel better? The numbers of disease contraction do not bear to continuation of this practice, flat out. This should be a choice. If someone wants to wear one, they sure can. There's no judgment, no judgment. Masks are ridiculous. There's a lot of redundant comments here, and I'm curious why it seems like they just get ignored. We are in a representative government. By that, I mean, there's a constituency that's paying taxes that elected the board members that are here. Throughout this pandemic, with the other members in this board, I felt like a lot of us were getting alienated. And at many times, some of the things that were said by board members in these meetings was downright offensive. But we can't be as offensive back. We get a memo that says what we can and cannot say. In the very next meeting, we hear stuff coming out of faces that is just offensive. And I find it very inappropriate. I work in an industry where
10
I am
seconds.
in frontline worker with seniors, the most vulnerable group of people. And they don't want to see the children in the mask. They don't want teachers in a mask. They want the kids to breathe fresh air and learn, do your job, represent the constituents.
Thank you. At this point, we're at the 30-minute limit. And so we have right now, there are 4 more people on the list. So the question is, I have to be put to the board. Do we want to extend public comments?
I move we extend it.
Okay, we have moved second. All right, and then we have, I think both Heather and Jane are on Zoom. So as long as we can hear and see both of them, we'll do vote here, and then we'll have to switch the audio over so we can hear them, okay? What's that? Yeah, so no one else has signed up for some time now, so we'll just do these last 4, okay? Everyone's agreeing with that? Okay, so I think we do have to vote. We have a motion in a second, so all those in favor? Aye. Can we go to Zoom, switch to audio, please, Brandon?
Aye. Yes, aye. Yes.
Okay, well, that's good enough. So we'll just go with that for right now. Heather, if you are, Brandon, please switch the audio back over to me. Heather, Justin, if you are on the Zoom, please make sure you have your video on so we can see you. But we'll move forward with these last 4. There were no nays in that vote. All right, Miss Amber Haynes.
Amber Haynes, 2028 South 98th Street. I have 3 children in the West Dallas, West Milwaukee School District, where we have been for 11 years. I used to say with great pride that we were a part of this district. My children used to love being a part of this district. After the events of the past 2 years, that is no longer the case. While we watched our friends and family return to in-person learning, they remained at home. While we watched our friends and families no longer require masks or quarantine, theirs remained. Even after the CDC said cloth masks are basically useless. Being quarantined in this district puts these kids so far behind with no virtual option that they cannot dig out, especially at the middle and high school levels. I know, I have lived it. These mandates and protective measures have done more harm than good for the vast majority of your student population in the forms of social, emotional, and educational progress that has not been made for these children. I hope that today's vote results in lifting both the masking and the quarantining requirements for the sake of our children. Personally, my children begged me to come here today and speak to you. If this vote fails again, I hope that those of you that continue to vote against it are not very comfortable in those seats, because you're not going to be there very much longer. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Michael May.
Michael May, 2375 South Green Links. First of all, of course, no one likes to wear masks. I was joking. No, I don't like to wear a mask. But I wanted to come here real quick to thank the board for doing its best over the last couple of years. You know, the number one function of a school board and a school district is to educate children. And you did the best you could, I believe, over the last 2 years with the conditions as they are. I would ask for everyone to be quiet as I was for them. Number 2, you do your best to look after the health and well-being of our community. And I know some people disagree with the way that that was done, but I truly believe that everyone, including people in the audience and people on the board, want what's best for their children and their health. They just have different views of what that looks like. And third, you've done so within your rights as granted by the state of Wisconsin and upheld by the courts. So thank you for a job well done. Every problem begs for a solution, and every solution will inherently create other problems. Your first problem was the shutdown in 2020. You adapted wonderfully. Our teachers adapted wonderfully. Our parents and students did the best they could to adapt. Next was getting kids back in the classroom and finding ways to do that safely. And I truly believe this board has done what it can to do so safely. And third, now we're at a point where we're looking at transitioning into a mask optional. If you recall, I came to the board in fall and my big thing was, please, let's wait, require the masks until such time as we have the opportunity to vaccinate our children. And except for those who are, I believe, 5 and under, who may not be fully vaccinated right now, parents have had an opportunity to vaccinate their children if they wish. So it may surprise some people here that I'm actually in support of the mask optional transition plan as it's written. It follows what other districts have done, and it moves us towards mitigating parental concerns in a measured way. And I believe that with time, it will allow you to fully leave it, a fully optional plan. So in closing, thank you for all you've done. Again, this has been 2 hard years on all of us as parents, on our students, on our teachers, and I know it's been hard on you as well. You've acted from a position of education and safety first. You've done so within your rights as granted by the state of Wisconsin and upheld by the courts. And if I may say, during tumultuous times. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chuck Willer.
Hello, can you hear me?
On Zoom. Brandon, he's on Zoom.
Yes. I'm on Zoom. All right. Can you hear me? Hello?
We can hear you.
All right, thank you. All right, but Chuck Willer, 10525 West Greenfield Avenue. Lately, I've been watching the school board from afar. The things I have seen are very disappointing. Members are playing partisan politics and doing bullying tactics with those who disagree. The one major thing that all members have forgotten about what schools are for. Schools are for children. Let me repeat that. Schools are for children. It may sound redundant, it may sound overly simplified, but sometimes we have to say the simplest things out loud to remind us what is going on. Schools exist here in West Dallas so that young people can learn. School, for lack of better term, are for kids. They are here to educate so that when they graduate from high school, they'll have a basic life knowledge and are prepared to go into the world and do what is necessary to become successful members of society. Now we can go on forever explaining how we continue to fail in that goal. We have schools for a reason. It is not so that teachers can have jobs, so that administrators can cash their paychecks or give lawmakers something to do. The schools are about children, giving them a great education, except lately we'd rather teach the kids the air is bad. We tell our kids to stay masked, stay 6 feet apart. Our friends have germs. While some members of the board have practiced pure hypocrisy by taking vacations, going to ball games, visiting bars and restaurants, walking in praise while maskless. If you have kids in school, you know this to be true. Schools are germ factories. Every fall, we send our kids off to school. They come home with the back to school bug. Every year, a variety of ailments runs through the schools. People get sick. Kids miss a couple days, couple weeks, and then they go back. We don't send other kids home because one kid gets sick. We send the kids off to school with a box of Kleenex, knowing that these things are going to happen. I know there's some of you are screaming and mad about what I said. But however, I truly do believe with common sense on everybody's part, we can go back to life the way it was and catch our children up from this self-inflicted damage. If you guys can't do this, then maybe it's time for you guys all to resign. Have a good day.
Natalie Wolf.
I'm on Zoom.
Oh, she is. Okay.
I hope you can hear me. I'm on Zoom.
We can hear you.
Natalie Wolf, 1120 South 95th Street. Every school board meeting, Dr. Lexman gets up and gives his superintendent report along with an update on the return to in-person learning. And one of the first things he says at every meeting is our goal is learning that works for all. What we've been doing over the past 2 years is not learning that works for all. I'm thankful that we're finally talking about the quarantining and removing that today. I believe I was back there in November begging you guys to consider this because of the amount of days that kids were being taken out of school. If you go to our district website and look at our internal health metrics between the weeks of October 4th and February 18th, our district has had 1,901 quarantines. That is not days of quarantines, that is number of quarantines. Multiple kids have been taken out for numerous days. So that is thousands of days of staff and student days missed. That's huge. And there was never an adequate plan to provide learning to those kids. They were, good luck to you. You know, you got some papers, you got a couple of, worksheets to work on. It was never good enough. I know my kids were sent home multiple times. So our district has failed our kids, and the policies that you have put in place have failed our kids. Let's talk about the new plan you want to put in place for making masks optional. What is the 1.5% positivity rate that you guys have come up with? Where did that number come from? You guys had that 5% number for moving to virtual, and you admitted it was an arbitrary number. You guys came up with it. Is this the same thing? So in our school, we have about 190 to 200 people in our school. So that would take 3 people to be sick, and then you would make everybody put masks back on again. It's an unrealistic goal. I asked Noah where this number came from. He never responded. Kristen Kaiser shared a Harvard article with me when I asked about this number. And I'm not sure if that's what you guys are looking at, but that article was dated of May of 2020. And it is a long time from May of 2020. And they never said 1.5%. They gave a range of 3 to 5%. So again, I asked why 1.5%. It's time to move forward. It's time to stop taking baby steps and let families make their own choices. Anyone who wants to be vaccinated can be vaccinated. That is not a problem. I will end with this. Your job as a board member is not to do what feels good for you, what you are comfortable with. Your job is to do what is in the best interest of our students. What is in the best interest of our students is to remain in class. We should not be quarantining these close contacts anymore. And what is best for our students' health regarding masking is what each family decides is best for them. Thank you.
Right, that will end our public comments for this evening. Thank you very much for everyone who came and provided a public comment or provided one via Zoom. We'll now move on to our action item this evening, item 4.1, change to COVID mitigation practices. Dr. Lexman.
Yes, thank you, and thank everybody that participated this evening as well. What you have in front of you is really an attempt to find a balance, and we've hit a number of these moments in the last couple of years, is where we're trying to find kind of what is a reasonable kind of path forward between kind of what we proposed last week, which was to make masks optional. But then the board started to talk about quarantine practices and mitigation practices more broadly. So we thought maybe there's an opportunity to find a middle ground here and to propose something that balances by removing quarantine, except for those that are exhibiting symptoms, seeing how that goes for 2 weeks, and then making masks optional, right, as a way to try to find some path to begin to phase ourselves out of the mitigation work. Because I don't want to repeat a lot of what's been said, but frankly, I agree with a lot of what's been said in terms of what we've experienced and what our kids have experienced. And I both personally, professionally feel it's time to move forward. And so hopefully this is that kind of path. I do want to address the 1.5%, and I've been upfront about kind of the numbers we've set throughout this as other superintendents in our area, and it is the best kind of honest guess at what is reasonable to try to keep kids safe. But it's true, in very small schools, that is less than a handful of kids. And so is 3% a better number? Is 5% a better number? I think any of those where we set a threshold that everybody knows, so it's clear, it's public, it's understood, it's been approved by the board, at what point I'm expected to trigger, we have to go back to masks now, right? And whether that's 1.5% or 3% or 5%, I just need to know what direction you want me to move forward with. So with that as an introduction, this is really an attempt to find what is our path forward in this moment, and hopefully there aren't more moments that we have to figure that out. But it really is all of us on the side of trying to run the schools, looking for some direction from all of you at this point. Tell us where we go next. So with that, I'll turn it back over.
All right, so Jane, I can see you not see, I see a Heather, I do not see a Heather video. I don't know if that's Heather Justin or not, but we'll go with comments here in the room first, and then we'll look at comments from Zoom, just so everyone is aware. So open up for comments. Yes, Kristen.
I like to see the 1.5% increase.
Okay,
I'm happy between a 3 and 5. And I would like to see what other board members would like to see us there, because Natalie has a point. The
Mhm.
very small schools would be hit very quickly versus a larger school like Hale. And so I would like to know what other board members are comfortable with.
Brendan?
Do we know if any of our schools have had over a 1.5% hit?
No. 1.44.
Bill, I don't
Oh,
mean
sorry.
to, I did look at it because when I was looking at the 1.5%, there were schools that did go over that. In January, there were some schools over 5%. After winter break, it was particularly bad here in the district. I was looking particularly also at Madison and Longfellow. They didn't get above 2% though for what their rates were. The 5%. I kind of look at the winter break as an outlier just because everything that was going on. We had full-blown Omicron at that point, plus everyone coming back from break. So if you kind of exclude those 2 weeks after we got back originally, around 2% is really the number that I was looking at from historically looking at what's happening in our districts. Now, obviously, that's with all of our current mitigation practices in place. I'm sorry, Amy was next. Okay.
I am agreeing. I would like to see the percentage up. I think that if we're going to look at positive cases on a school by school basis, we currently have 4 schools, 1 high school, 3 elementary schools that are around the 200 population. That includes students and staff combined. I think that they're going to be unduly penalized if we're looking at 1.5%, and I'd like to see that at least at about 3%.
Okay, so 3%. Brian?
Yeah, I'm also in favor of raising it. I think my concern is, I don't want to do this, and we are already anticipating that potentially these numbers could go up with removing the quarantining practices. So the last thing that I want to see is all of a sudden we're sitting at a 1.6 or 1.7, and then we have to go backwards. I don't want to do that. I know my concern last week was largely in regard to the quarantining practices and the fact that we didn't really have a good plan, or at least anything that was communicated in terms of how that was going to move forward. I think doing both at once makes sense, or in this plan, but I think that threshold needs to be a little bit higher.
Okay. Did you have any number in mind that you would be more comfortable
I'd be
with?
comfortable with 3 to 5. I don't know that I'd go over 5, but.
Okay.
I would agree with Brian. I'm comfortable with 3 and 5. I'm not comfortable with waiting till March 7th for the removal of the mask.
All right,
Yeah.
Let's split the difference, put it at 4.
So 4% for the cutoff is what you're proposing?
And what if we split the difference and
What are we proposing here?
I think we're
I mean,
talking about
are we changing our motion on what we're going to vote on? Is that what we're trying to do?
We're just talking.
Right now,
It's
I
the
think we're
threshold
talking
for
through.
Yeah, there's no
remasking.
motion at this point. Yeah.
I think what we want to do is before we officially move anything, we want to make sure that it makes sense
So when
and
you
that it will
say-
have support.
Okay, so like I would like to make a motion to remove masks completely. I would also like to move closer to what the Wauwatosa plan is, where they have in place, I believe they're quarantined and they're close contact currently. I'd be willing to do that for about 2 to 3 weeks and have that in place while we go maskless. So we can monitor the numbers, so we know that if in 2 weeks our numbers do increase, that we can react to those numbers increasing. We've had a history of following Wauwatosa School District for many things that we've done in this district because we feel we closely align to Wauwatosa in a lot of different ways. I don't know why we would all of a sudden deviate from that currently. They have gone to no face masks. I was at the basketball game at Tulsa East on Friday night, and I asked every person I asked what they thought, and I did not have one supporter of continuing with masks. And I thought, while we're here, this is a pretty powerful statement that we're done with masks here. So I move to amend
your proposal to mask optional, we can discuss the quarantine and do that, and we can vote on it.
But that's the
So
proposal.
move in motion and let's. I'll
No,
amend it then.
Bill's moving for mass optional immediately. He's
Oh,
not
I
moving
got you.
for it to
Sorry.
happen
Thank you.
after 2 weeks.
Uh,
Please, no,
No,
if we have to clear the room, we will, but your time to speak is done, and now we're gonna talk. Thank you.
I
It's
will
the-
second that
It's
motion.
decorum. Okay, so we have a motion, a second. So, so what is exactly those? You're saying mass
I say
optional.
Mass optional immediately tomorrow. I would like to keep in place our quarantine and close contact that we currently have until I'm open to, I'd like to see it 2 weeks, but people have said that they'd like to go a little longer to see what type of numbers and see if the masks do affect it, because I think when you say we assume that the numbers are going to go up, that's not a real accurate statement that we can assume that the numbers are going to go up because we're going to go maskless. Because if you've been into any of our schools over probably the last 2 weeks, you would know that the masks aren't being properly worn. You would know that probably there's, and I'm not calling anyone under the bus, but I'm sure there's educators that aren't enforcing the mask in all of our buildings. So that, I'm willing to discuss how much longer we want to go with the quarantine, and that 3 to 5%. If a school goes above 3%, I would be willing to go back to masks for 2 weeks to see if we can get it under control, or 3 weeks, or whatever that number looks like. But I would like to go to optional masks immediately.
Okay. So just so we're clear, you'd rather get rid of masks
Yes.
right away,
Yes.
but keep,
Similar to a TOSIS.
but keep students. I mean, so the
But we're not
quarantine,
testing it anymore. So I don't believe those numbers are gonna go up. We're not wearing the mask anymore.
right?
So basically, it sounds like the same thing we voted on last week. No, for the most part. With a caveat of we're gonna keep the quarantine in place and have a time where we're gonna take the quarantine away.
So my concern last week, which is why I voted no, was the fact that we have the quarantining in place. And I feel as though in that case, there are some kids that are being hurt when they leave school, when they leave school for that time period. Because it's a lot for the teachers to handle when that many kids are gone. So my concern would still remain the same. I understand the point from the mask, but my fear is if we're keeping the quarantining in place, there still are some students that could be harmed by having to have to quarantine and missing that time at school. So that's my concern, which is ultimately, that's again, kind of my thought last week as well.
That's what's happening now.
Exactly.
But I don't think when we take the masks off, our numbers aren't going to increase like you assume that they were gonna. And I don't think people are testing as much as they
No,
have.
and I
And I
agree.
don't believe people are staying home when their kids are sick. I believe they're staying home one day and sending them back to school. So with all of that happening right now, I don't believe our numbers are gonna increase.
And I'm not saying
And other-
necessarily they will.
400 and some school districts agree with us, 34, or agree with that assessment, and 34 do not.
And I'm not saying they will, but what I am saying is I am concerned for the students that might be forced to quarantine, that they might be adversely impacted. That is my concern.
How is that different than quarantining now?
That's my point, which is why we looked
So
at
then
the
you would rather
quarantining and the face mask.
Remove masks and quarantine altogether
that's the proposal.
That's what the proposal was.
on Monday, and it was voted down. So we're trying to compromise.
No, Monday
Bill, last
did not
week,
have
we
anything
we
to do
still
with
had
it.
nothing to talk about close
Okay,
contact.
great, I got you.
Okay.
Okay, so that's the
So if
difference.
you're saying to me, right here, right now, that you're willing to remove masks immediately tomorrow and remove all quarantine and close contact, I'm all for that.
That's not necessarily what I was saying, but what I am saying is that again, my concern last week was the fact that we weren't removing the quarantining and close contact, because we need to make sure that the kids are, again,
But
not
this-
adversely
what's different is
impacted.
we're putting a time limit on.
True.
So it's gonna end in 2 weeks or 3 weeks or a month.
Or we
And
can,
we can monitor our numbers to see if they've gone up or down, not assume that they're gonna go up and down and react to that.
or we could do vice versa and just shooting this out there.
But I
We
don't
could.
think vice versa in what I see here is what people want.
And I get that, but originally this was probably going to, some version of this was going to come up next week. More than
Well, then
likely.
let's scrap it and go next week. for
But
the
my
full
point
vote.
is, let me finish, please. My point is maybe we remove the quarantining now, wait a week, and then remove the face mask if everything looks good.
I don't.
And again, I'm not saying that's the right option. I'm just talking through this right now in terms of what our options are.
Right. And that's what the proposal is, and that's why.
Well, that was
don't
2
agree.
weeks. That was 2 weeks out. I was kind of
Right.
splitting the difference.
Right, okay. So that's where I'm gonna amend the amendment.
Can you
That's when we
restate?
motion. If
Yeah.
there's anything that anybody else would like to add,
But just a second, Bill. Restate your motion that you're making because it was a little bit vague. And so what exactly, talk about masking, talk about quarantine, talk about
Masking?
percent, and talk about time.
masking optional, starting tomorrow,
Okay,
okay, all facilities. I would like to move similar to the TOSA plan where they still have quarantine in place and close contact in place. And I would be willing to do that for 2 weeks would be what I would like to do, but I'd be willing to do another week or two with that. I would like to have the I would be willing to do the 3% positivity rate in the school before we would decide to go back to mass. So that 3% number is a number that I think I can live with.
Mhm.
And that's basically it. So mass starting tomorrow. The time limit on keep the close contact, family contact, and quarantine in place for 2 weeks while we remove the masks, and have a 3% positivity rate that would trigger mandatory masks back in the building if that building hits 3% positivity rate.
okay. So based off of the current proposal, you're basically swapping masking and quarantine,
Yes,
and you're changing the percent to 3%.
yes,
There's no difference with the proposal besides those two items. Is that correct?
correct.
Okay. So we haven't had a chance, if everyone's okay, I want to switch the audio over so Jane can give her feedback or input on this right now. So Brandon, can you swap the audio over, please?
I think that we are at the point in this endemic that we can safely remove the masks starting tomorrow. And I think that we could take the approach that we remove the masks and we remove the close contact quarantining. And we give it 2 weeks and we see what happens. I do not feel that our children will be unsafe. And I think that we should drop both of them. And then if we have to go back, if there's a huge spike, we go back. But I think it is time to end both and end them both soon, tomorrow. And that's how I feel. So, Bill, I was with you up until the point of you saying that you don't want to remove the close contact quarantining. Because as I said last week, I think that's just as important. And I just feel we are at a point where we need to say, we need to not be afraid to try this. Lots of other people have done it. And if we have a spike, or if then we reconvene and we say, all right, let's take a look. Maybe it was too soon, whatever. But it can safely remove both at this time. And that's how I feel.
You don't think?
Jane, I agree with you on both actually, but I was
Bill, just a second.
compromising.
I don't think she can hear you.
Compromising with
I can hear him.
quarantine in place until we can learn from having masks off if there's any real spike.
Can you hear us, Jane?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, sorry. Chris,
Bill, for the 2 weeks, can we put it at March 7th, put that as our hard date to then
That's what I would prefer, yes.
I would support that. Do 2-week quarantine. See where we are at with the masking
at 3%?
at 3%, and then March 7th, remove the close contact. I know it's 2 more weeks, but if we're gonna remove one mitigation, I'd like to see one more. I think that's where I'm at. I'm willing to hear other, but
Amy.
Just listening here and just listening to the comments, at this point, I think I would like, actually, I'm kind of leaning more towards, let's do mask optional, let's do quarantine optional, let's look at our numbers. And if we have to go back to masking, yeah, that's why after listening to this, watching people cry, and and I'm watching some of the expressions and the emotions, and I think we're all emotional about this. I think we all want what's best for our kids, and at this point, listening to Jane and stuff, I think let's get rid of let's do masking optional, let's do quarantining, not doing the close quarantines, because that's my biggest thing. I want kids in school. So this close contact quarantine, I think honestly, that's the thing that I want to see get rid of, because I want kids at school. I don't want them sitting at school if they're had a close contact or sitting at home doing nothing. So that's kind of where I'm at right now.
For Brenda, I'd like to hear your opinions, if you're willing.
Yeah, no, I'm just taking it all in, and I think that in where I'm at is I like what we're looking at for the motion, or not the motion, but the action item of the night. I think that one of the biggest things, and even in hearing everyone else, the piece of people being out of school has been the big issue. So I think quarantining is our bigger one. I don't think that dropping both things at once is a good idea, because then we don't know whether or not one is going to impact the other. Whereas if we drop quarantining and we don't have a bump, great, we drop masks, off we go. But if we end up where we have more kids out for the next 2 weeks because there's still more quarantining, and then we have a bump, then we're still in masks. And so we're not going to necessarily move forward. I'm okay moving up our percentage rate, because I think that having it at 1.5 will hit smaller schools in a way that's not consistent with what I think the spirit of what this is trying to accomplish. And so I would be good with a 3 to 5% space as well. But I'm not in favor of dropping the masks at this point. I would be more in favor of dropping our quarantines like we have in there, and doing it as a timed phase out.
Well, there's a motion, so.
Yeah, so for me, I would go either way on the masking or the quarantining. The reason why I was more in favor of the quarantining was for keeping kids in school as the first step, and then having the mitigation percent looked at. I'm fine raising it to 3% for a number. That's the reason why 1.5% was the original one that was being looked at by admin, was because of the plans that were out there. That was the higher of the two. There was one that was 1%, one that was 1.5%. So that's why that was kind of the first one proposed, with the understanding that it might be modified. So I'm fine with going up with the percent, and I'm fine with doing one or the other first and letting it go for 2 weeks. And if we don't have a bump, then dropping the other. I was again more in favor of the quarantine first, because of just it immediately would keep kids in school. And if there was kids currently quarantined, they would be able to come back to school as long as they didn't have symptoms, So that was why I was looking at that. It had an impact right away about education.
What's our current numbers, Marty? Just interested.
So our current sitting here. Our current positivity rate is 0.10, so 1/10%.
Okay.
And there are no schools right now, as I've just kind of ran through as of last Friday, above a quarter of 0.25%. So we're low right now.
How many do we have close contact right now, quarantining?
Quarantine as of last Friday was 22 students and staff.
Okay.
Yeah, so procedurally, if I can here, so Jeff, need your attention as the parliamentarian, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I'm hearing 2, possibly 3 board members interested in potentially, changing the mask requirement effective tomorrow and quarantine contact effective tomorrow, but there's a different motion on the table. So that would require a friendly amendment from one of the board members that was interested in that, and that would then take the maker of the motion and the maker of the second to accept the friendly amendment if you wanted to see that changed. Otherwise, eventually the motion on the table has to be voted on.
Right.
So Mike, did I
I'd
do that
like,
right?
I'd like to make that amendment, and as the person that seconded, he wants to too.
So could you clarify then exactly what the motion is now?
It's removal.
Yeah.
It's no mask tomorrow and quarantine with cold.
Which one?
Close contact?
No, we didn't want close contact. We
That's what I
wanted-
had.
Yeah,
That's
you
what
wanna
you
change
had,
it
yeah.
again? Okay, my
The
bad.
amendment, the amendment, there's no mask and no quarantine.
Okay.
And keeping the 3%.
And the percentage goes from 1.5
5 to 3%, that would
Yeah.
direct us to re-implement mask requirements.
So that would be ongoing, just so we're clear. So it's an ongoing thing that would be looked at. And masking would be implemented automatically. It's not a vote by us to do that. If it goes over the 3% at or above 3%, that's when it would trigger. So motion or second?
Second.
Well, we don't.
To Jeff's
Sorry.
Friendly.
Okay, I apologize.
Or do we have to have Phil accept the amendment?
It's a friendly one, so all he has to do is say yes. or no.
Okay, just making sure.
That's why I jumped in there.
Thank you.
Jane, did you want to say something?
Can you hear me? So just to clarify, so if we drop masks and close contact quarantining, and then we reach 3%, we would go back to masks. Would we also go back to quarantining? Is that what you're saying? We'd go back to both or?
Some nods and some.
We lost Jane. She was-
It'd be by,
She was still talking.
this would be by school basis.
Yeah.
All right.
I was under the understanding it would just be that the masks would just be implemented then for those
Yeah.
times until the month, the 3%, if we dropped underneath, not quarantine.
Okay, okay,
Yeah,
okay. I just wanted to clarify.
That's the way I'm, oh, sorry.
I think Jane just did a thumbs up.
So, well,
Yeah.
that should be clear, I guess.
Yeah, we need to make sure that's clear.
Yeah, that's the way I'm understanding the language of the motion is that it, or at least what I believe I heard was that it would just re-implement mask requirements, the 3% threshold. It was not part of the motion that
That was your
suggested we would re-implement quarantines.
Yeah, I think if we're basing it off the original one, that's the way I took it too, that it would just be the
Okay.
masking.
Okay.
That would be re-implemented if we hit that threshold. So that's my assumption.
So to clarify, so our current motion is we get done of masking would be optional tomorrow. We would get rid of close quarantine and then we would implement the 3%. Any school wise, any school that goes over 3%, we would put masking back in place temporarily till numbers went down.
Yes.
Yeah, it should be minimum.
Down
of
to
2
what?
weeks.
Down to
It doesn't
what?
go down within that 2 weeks and would continue until it does go down. I think if it went longer than a month, we might want to look at other things, but that would take board action to do.
And we can do that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm okay with that. Call them.
So we have a
Call
motion,
them.
a second.
Do we need to have a roll call?
Yeah, we'll have to do a roll call.
Okay.
So.
Ready for that? Ready for a roll call vote?
Yep.
All right. Mr. Burns,
No.
Mrs. Kaiser,
Yes.
Mr. Sikich.
Yes.
Ms. Deal,
Yes.
Mr. Keller,
Yes.
Mr. Eustruck,
Yes.
Mrs. Carr,
Yes, yes.
Mrs. Justum. I don't believe she's on, but I'm going to give it a second here. Okay. She is absent. And President Lee.
No. All right, that passes. All right,
Okay.
so let's move on to our workshops. Our first one, 5.1 Communication and Community Relation Workshop,
Oh.
school showcases.
Yeah, we need a few minutes. Let us.
Okay, we have a 5 minute.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's take a 5-minute recess. We'll come back for the school showcases. Yep. Just need to be on Zoom anymore. So I'm not gonna be. Oh, I missed someone to sign up last minute. It was pro max. William Dice.
What's up next?
School showcase.
Oh, school show. Okay.
Sure. Yeah, I know. Sounds great.
Yeah.
So my sorority every year, the last week of the year before we end the year.
This will feel good.
Or
just the rest of it is.
What are you doing? Pee? I'm going downstairs.
Why? Why, Daddy?
I think Sparky's coming on soon.
I'm having extra pain in my arm and it's so frustrating.
Wait.
I'm going to reconvene. Is this on? I'm going to reconvene the meeting. So we'll start off with the school showcases. So Adam?
All right. Thank you for joining us and allowing us to come and showcase some of our schools. So it is great to see so many kids and families that are here in order to talk about their learning experiences and how we are servicing all of our students this year. So we have 5 schools with us tonight. So we have Nathan Hale, West Dallas Central, Pershing Elementary, Franklin Elementary, and Walker Elementary. So I am going to invite the principals of each one of those schools just to come up for about a minute and talk about what they're working on as a school and what their school goals are this year, and then why they brought these particular students and how they are helping meet those goals. Then what we'll do is we'll just do a little roundtable as you can see, a little crowded in here. The kids are very excited to talk to you guys, which is great because there was a lot of buzz in the back in our offices about kids who are excited about their learning and really anxious to share that with you guys. And then we'll spend about 8 minutes. We'll pair up. We'll spend about 8 minutes at each group and then just kind of slide through those groups if that works. So, but first I'll invite principals up to just talk, a minute or two about who they brought and some goals they're working on. So I can see Matt is already ready to go over there. So I'll start with Matt. Yep. Yeah, that would be great, Matt.
Adam, I just wanted to start out and just thank all of the parents and families that came tonight and for sticking around. And staff. Sorry, staff and staff.
All right, so try to make it brief here. We have our school improvement plan focused on 2 prongs. One is on ACT preparedness, and the other piece is really on the deeper learning competencies. All right. And the group we brought tonight from Nathan Hale is our flex community, our freshman flex community. Our teacher representation is Mr. Marino, one of the English teachers, but we also have Mr. Valavinos, Ms. Nowak Boyd, and Ms. Zai that are part of that team. We also have 4 special ed teachers, Mr. Wells, Ms. Holtz, Mr. Shutke, and Ms. Galbraith. That's the team. And they work with about 85 students in this flex community, which is a lot like those teams at the intermediate schools. Okay, so as they transition in, they embrace our deeper learning competency work through project-based learning and cross-curricular design. So that's one of the powers of this. So they all have the same kids throughout the day. So when they plan, they can plan cross-curricularly to develop real cool lessons and real cool work. We brought 2 teams along. First team is Carter King, Zoe O'Brien, and Cornisha Franklin. They're sitting back here. And then Jay Kruger, Jason Grace, and Jacob Eisenberger are here. And they're going to talk about their projects today. You can see their displays out here. But they really were focused on content mastery. However, there's all these other pieces about the deeper learning competencies to get that student college and career ready. And we talk about those things around communication, collaboration, being self-directed, applying critical thinking skills, and just having that academic mindset. And so today they're going to talk about their Empathy in America architecture project. And it really began with researching Frank Lloyd Wright's building design philosophy right here in our communities. And really the design around affordable housing and how that went over time. And they researched that. They went on a field trip to launch the project. And now they studied about it. They wrote about it. They created their own greenhouse designs and what they would look like. And so they brought in all those deeper learning competencies into their project. And you're going to learn a lot here, and that's where I'll leave it. Okay, thank you.
Good evening. Franklin School is here, and we are ready to showcase the journey that we've taken. We're on year 3 of our journey as a project-based learning school, and that has just become our way of teaching. Project-based learning to us means our kids are collaborating with their classmates and teachers. Kids are setting goals and monitoring their growth. Kids are solving problems, whether that's in the lunchroom, the recess, the classroom. Our kids' voice determines our steps as a staff. Today, I brought with us our 4th and 5th grade team as they just put on their page to stage, and they're going to share that with you. I also brought our 3rd grade team with Mrs. Gutzwiller. I also brought our 1st and 2nd grade teachers and team, Mrs. Schaefer and Mrs. Garvey, because I said, just bring one. They decided to bring 9. So, and then we have our K4, K5 team that would love to share their presentation with you, but our teacher did have to go home. So Franklin School, year 3 of our project-based learning journey.
Oh, we are Pershing proud, right in the back corner over there. Woo, woo. All right, so our vision is that Pershing will be an inclusive learning environment that embraces the cultures within our community so that we can empower learners to own the deeper learning competencies to live life on their own terms. Our school improvement plan goals were created with this vision and our district strategic plan in mind. Through the 21-22 school year, our Pershing staff has designed instruction that honors, elevates, and engages students' stories so that students develop to their full academic and social potential, all while feeling a sense of belonging in our school community. Our reading and math goal states that by embedding the deeper learning competencies within our guaranteed and viable curriculum, we are able to create more rigorous learning opportunities. As you will see tonight, our students created projects that impacted our entire Pershing community. Through these projects, students were able to share their new learning in a variety of ways. These students demonstrated problem solving, critical thinking, collaboration with their peers, and understanding that their learning has purpose, providing students with their why. Our learners here tonight will show what happens when teamwork brings a community together. From Pershing, we have several student representatives and teacher representatives. So from Ms. Pagankoff and Ms. Rosenbaum's 1st and 2nd grade classrooms, we have Emma, Jesse, DeAnthony, and Noelle over here. And from Ms. Holtz and Ms. Spangenberg's 4th and 5th grade classrooms, we have Richard, Jacob, Jorge, and Ari in the back corner over there. And then also our fabulous deeper learning coach, Nicole Elman. So we can't wait to show you our learning. Thank you.
Hi, I am Stacy Lang, the principal at Walker.
This year at Walker, we have been working on ways to find ways for all of our students to grow in their sense of identity, belonging, and personal empowerment in a relational, supportive, and student-centered community. We focus on embedding social emotional learning across all content areas through SEL curriculums taught by our staff and our school counselor, and through the work of a dynamic school character committee. This committee is committed to intentionally focusing on character education, adding to the development and success of the whole child. So through this work, and in order to live out our vision of creating experiences that build community and empowers learners so that they can live life on their own terms, our school has worked with our students to establish many student clubs. These clubs allow students to further experience and explore our core values and provides leadership roles within our school. So tonight, over here, I have a large crew of Walker staff. And we have students representing Garden Club, Junior Coaches, Kind Kids Club, Language Club, Snack Shack, Student Council, and Theater Club. We have Janae, Caitlin, Elijah, Javon, Aubrey, Milena, Aiden, Max, and Lily, and all of the advisors for those clubs. Thank you for coming tonight. The students are so excited to be able to spend some time sharing with you about their experiences that they've had in their clubs and how those clubs had been started. So I'm so excited for you to be able to talk to them in a little bit. Thank you.
All right, good evening. I'm Dr. Antoine Reed. I'm the proud principal of Central High School. We too have been focused on the social emotional well-being of our students. And we brought 3 scholars here today that are going to talk about some of the things that we embody at Central High School. One of the things that we like to talk about is our deeper learning proponents. And within that, our students, Macy, David, and Aisha, brought their teacher to represent how they felt about deeper learning. So I want to introduce Mrs. Lemkowski, our teacher, they're gonna share some of the things that we've done this year at Central. One of the things that we talked about this year was our bags. We like students to come in with this acronym, that their behavior should be leadership, their attendance should be present but engaged, and their grades are important, and their social emotional well-being is our focus at Central High School. Our deeper learning proponents are what we're gonna share with the board today. One of the things that we're going to talk about is mastering curriculum. Our 3 scholars are also going to talk about how they are confident in displaying their learning. So I do want to thank you guys for giving us a chance to display what we're learning at Central High School. And I want to give another shout out for bringing Ms. Kay, our deeper learning coach, who embodies what we do with deeper learning at Central High School. Thank you so much.
Okay, so what we'll do is we'll just split up in twos if we just go by twos. And then we'll start you guys off at a school. We'll just rotate through about every 9 minutes. And so ask questions, ask the kids what they're learning about. Teachers are here, students are here. So, you know, that opportunity for you guys to engage. All right.
Won't you be my buddy? All right, Marva. I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, some language.
Yeah, Judah.
No, that's fine. I didn't know what's going on. Yeah.
Yeah, we think so.
Yeah.
No,
You
it's
can start
fine.
at Franklin, that's fine.
I'll have you guys start at
Walker.
Yeah, I asked.
I don't
Adam
know.
to ask Brandon, so it looks like we're on.
Oh, we are on. It's on. It's on. Hey, everybody, all board members, if you could please wrap up and come on back to your seats.
Try and be more concise.
I'll just stop freezing raining out yet.
Up to.
I pulled language exactly from the recommendation and just changed the website. Hey, the little girl at the.
Okay, so, yeah, maybe it's reversing.
Oh my God, so flipping cute.
She was just like, you didn't even have to.
No, she, the whole thing, she's over there still working. She's so cute.
So that.
Daphne's on the workout. People are questioning her parents. It's just gross. You know what? My daughter does swim. You can't wear a mask while swimming. But they do the best they can. And we have freaking very conservative people on our swim team.
But keep them.
Yeah.
It's above the line.
They've done wear masks.
Put on for 2 weeks.
Oh, the forest already had their schools.
Over the ones that was recommended.
Okay. Yeah, I think we just got to get it out.
I mean, hopefully not, but I'm gonna have to recreate it.
Right.
Yeah, expecting not.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, we're good. Good.
Uh-oh. Our mics are live. Hi, Deidre.
That's the only thing I'm gonna still be notifying parents if their child is a close contact. They just don't have to warn if there's some decent.
Right.
So I just got an email from someone asking. So I just want to make sure, yeah, we're still doing all the work as far as notifying people, but they decide.
Love that
if they
stuff.
don't have to.
Ooh, lots of closings tomorrow.
Yes, sir. No, I'm fine. Thank you.
No, thank you. I haven't even started mine yet. Thank you, though.
What? I have to let her say something. Just- Yes, go ahead. Is everyone back? Okay, yeah. Brandon? Where's Brandon?
Okay, can you hear me? Yes, good. I'm sorry I cannot be there tonight. I am not currently driving, but headed back from getting to see my niece play some high-level volleyball in the middle of Omaha, Nebraska for the weekend. But I just wanted to share that the work that we talked about last week with Melissa Matarazzo around our strategic plan, that's exactly what you're seeing tonight in those public demonstrations of learning and the level to which our students are able to articulate not just a thing they made or a thing they did, but what they actually learned is a lot of what we've been working on with some of our ESSER dollars and some of the coaching that we've had from Blue Dot Education this year. It's a ton of what we worked on for the last couple of years around our guaranteed and viable curriculum work. And I heard the comments in public comment about some of the parents being really concerned about those things. And we are equally concerned about some of the academic progress and the growth. And these are ways we have been addressing it and will continue to address it throughout the year. We'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to the ESSER part. But the other beautiful part about having a strategic plan is this is a community communications and community relations workshop tonight. And it was this awesome opportunity for us to work on 2 building blocks of that strategic plan that get at that same goal, being able to engage more with our community, being able to share exactly what we're learning. So I just wanted to thank all the teachers and the students who I have now seen hustling out the door because it's getting late for them. And thank you guys for your work tonight. And thank Amanda for the collaboration on making the space for our schools to share in the same way that they're learning and doing things in the classroom.
For that. And there's one student here still. So thank you so much for sticking around and for sharing with us this evening. So thanks a lot. And good luck on what you're going to do next year. Or, I'm sorry, go
No,
ahead, Kristen.
No, I'm good.
Oh,
Go ahead.
okay. All right, so if there's nothing else, we'll move on to item 5.2, our second of 3 workshops. Potential early retirement proposal, Mr. Duff.
Right, so I'm going to, I'm sorry, this probably was a little more confusing than actually what it is, so I apologize for that, but a while ago, we did receive some requests to review an early retirement concept, and we did send something to the actuaries to study, and we narrowed it to something called a rule of 85, and we had them research that, and then we received some cost items back, but he's redoing it. And then I also did some of my own cost research, and it actually came out that we believe that it would have a cost savings. So we're preparing to come out with a concept that hopefully the board maybe will approve on Monday. That would be a rule of 85 type concept. The idea is that we would narrow it to staff that have a minimum 30 years of service, minimum age 55. So that would target the teachers with the highest years of service in the district who've really put in a lot of time for the district. We also felt that we would have a slightly longer window than a real narrow one. We would have it until those who would reach those minimum age levels as of June 30th, 2024. And that gives us some time to that aligns with our school consolidation planning. It gives some time for retirement decision-making, and overall, we think that it could work. So this would be for the teachers and at-will employees. This concept would be about eligible to 28 staff. They would get pretty much the same benefits that they would if they had waited to retire when they were actually eligible at 62 or whatever it is. So they would get health coverage to 65. And then if they were eligible for sick leave or service time payout, they would receive that as well. And I think some of the other things we were thinking about is I estimate it would be about savings annually, 300,000 to 900,000 a year. But it all depends if we would have, this allows us to reduce staff in a more kind way where people are retiring and then we possibly don't need that position anymore. And we would have some of those positions go down, and some of that's in our planning anyway as we have declining enrollment. So the other thing we are thinking about recommending is most of the retirement plans have a 90% coverage and the staff pays 10%. We were thinking because we're giving something extra that they wouldn't normally be eligible for, we were thinking about proposing an 85% premium. So it's a slight increase in cost to them to have this, but this would recognize that we're giving something extra that they normally wouldn't have gotten, but it's a slight additional contribution. So that's what what we're planning to propose on Monday. Do you have any questions?
Before I could vote on something like this, I'd like to see the monetary benefits that are included in this.
Yeah, I could. So we will be sharing the actuarial analysis that we get from that. He's going to talk about costs, and then I have something that would have savings. So the savings is, it's about let's say if we replaced every teacher that.
I'm aware about, I'm talking about the individual teacher. If I have 30 years and I'm 55, what do I get if I retire?
So they would get health coverage to 65 for them and their spouse.
And
then
dollars?
There are some staff, most staff get a sick leave payout based on the current plan that most staff
See,
have.
All I've seen is one that was from about 4 years ago that has the numbers in there and had money for years in a district. And I'm
Right.
not for or against anything. I would just like to know what it is.
Yeah, and I guess we could summarize that because for each person, it'll be different. Some will be eligible for a time of service payment, some will be for sick leave. The sick leave will be different depending on how much sick leave they have, so.
An individual would not be eligible for both.
Some do get both. Some only get sick leave, some get both. It all depends on
How is
where.
that determined?
It was a formula that was done a while ago, back in 2012, I believe. That was the age cutoff. So.
Is there something in print somewhere on that?
Yes.
That's all I would need.
Okay. So we
Or I
can
mean,
get
you
that.
could email it to me, Mark. I don't. Thank you.
Any other questions about this?
The only thing is if there's other districts, from my perspective, there's other districts that have done this, or we've done this in the past, which I believe we have. If we're keeping consistent with that, as far as what we're offering or how we're offering it in comparison to other districts, because like other teachers are always going to compare it to other districts. So like having this optional like increased premium cost, I think that's reasonable to me. I don't know if other districts or if we in the past have done more, less, or other things as a way of saying, as an incentive for us to offer early retirement, there's this additional cost that you have to decide on. And right, it's a decision that the staff member would have to make if they want to take it or not. So if the premium thing was it, and that was the only thing we've ever done, or other districts have only ever done, cool. If not, just be interested to know what other options might be out there. Because maybe staff would prefer one or the other or something like that, or the board would prefer one or the other. I don't know. Just to consider.
Okay. Yeah, the other piece of this that we talked about is that, for some, and I support this, but for some employees, their retirement age was set under the current plan would be 62. So they would get 3 years of additional healthcare coverage until they're eligible for Medicare. For some, this changes it to age 55. Right. 7 more years. That's a considerable cost. It's a considerable investment to make.
Right.
That's why I think it's really important to hear the message of this doesn't save us money unless we start taking the opportunity to reduce some of these positions, knowing we're going to be reducing positions due to enrollment and consolidations. But if the expectation is we're replacing everybody that retires, this could cost us quite a bit of money because that's an expense, 7 more years of healthcare potentially, which is quite a benefit. The other thing that will come with this, it's the same as true with the compensation model. With any time you kind of introduce changes, you have to draw a line somewhere, and there's always somebody that gets left behind, right? So there'll be employees that, how come I didn't get that?
Right.
And I think that's the reality of setting some standard around like that, the standard of 85, right? And so there's a 3-year window. And if you follow, you've got to draw some lines. Otherwise, this goes on forever and you don't save any money and you introduce new liabilities for the board going forward.
That was a big thing years ago when we had 55 as an early retirement date. When do I turn 65 or 55? I mean, we had people starting that turned 55 on the first day back, a PD day. Well, that's the first day of work. So you aren't 55 at the start of the school year. And people tried to bargain that. All right, it's gonna be September 1st. Well, how about somebody born September 2nd? You have to have a day and you have to stick to it to make it fair for everybody.
Yeah, same kind of a concept. Yep.
I think there was a phase out, and I don't know it as detailed as I should, but because I'm the temp, but there was a time when more of these staff were eligible for a plan that was just like
Well,
this.
there was
And
a
then,
waiting list.
and then they phased it out. And so some used to have this 85 and then it was changed. And so some of this would be, some of these people who have that long years of service were eligible at one point in time for something like this. If that makes sense.
So that can
Then that changes in 2012, right?
The only other concern I have is if there's staff that would qualify for this, that we would need to replace because of what they teach and how difficult it would be to replace them. That's the other concern that I have about doing this. And then basically not being able to teach a staff member or a class or whatever, because this person had whatever certifications or whatnot. So I'm not saying that's a reason not to do it, but I just want to make sure that we have all of that information when we're making these sorts of decisions. And if we recognize that, what is the plan to then try and replace that individual?
Yeah, a little bit of that is also, don't get stuck on the one-to-one replacement. It's really about FTE.
Sure.
So we reduce the FTE, but there may be an individual with a particular certification that's retiring early. We know where we're going to need that kind of certification within the mix, but that means we're going to probably reduce something somewhere else when there's an opening. Okay, to find a way to balance that.
Right.
So it's really about reducing overall FTEs more than the individual positions that are retired from. Say anything.
And this is narrowing it to 28 people over a 3-year period. So we can, it's not going to be a huge hit to the district if as far as finding FTE.
And I guess I'm less concerned about the money part of it and more concerned about the education part of it. Because again, if the staff member that's retiring is hard to replace, then what do we do then? And that's the part I mean for planning. This person teaches XYZ classes. We have no one else in the district who can teach XYZ classes. As such, this is the plan to be able to still teach XYZ classes after they're gone. If we can't find someone, I don't understand we have 3 years. But what if they're retiring first year? So that's the only thing I would just making sure that we're keeping that in mind as well. Is that it? Other questions? No. Okay. Well, then we'll move on to our last. So you said this is coming on Monday, 28th?
That's our intention.
Okay. Is there any qualms about that? Any other questions or requests for data you'd like to see before we see it? They have the heads up.
I'd like to see that, whatever the data that you're sending, Jeff. You could
Yeah,
just
we'll share it with the whole
share it with
board.
the whole board. That would be useful.
Okay. All right. So then let's move on to our last one. ESSER funding.
So we had indicated in the past that we would go have an ESSER funding update. And so there's a couple of things I wanted to review, the ESSER programs and what some of our expense goals and breakdowns are. And I know Deidre was going to mention something, but as we were, and I don't know when she would like to chime in, but one of the things we wanted to make sure that are understood is that the ESSER funding is a flexible tool for the district to meet needs. So our management of the ESSER funds are flexible and they need to be continuously updated based on circumstances that face us. So we can have a snapshot in time and this is what we might need for ESSER, but we also have to save it for future needs and while also planning that. So we may come out and say, this is what we're thinking now, but it could easily change later. So this is what we're currently working towards. And it needs to also be responsive to stakeholder and community input. And we also want to make sure it's fiscally sound. And so we've come up with some ideas on that. We talked about this way back how much funding we get. These are the total amounts of funding that we received from the three ESSER funds. It's about, I think it's about 22 point something million in total funds over the 4-year period, 23.1. So back in November, this is what was provided to you as an update, that the top areas were mental health, HVAC, outdoor spaces, and clinical psychologists. But those are some of the recommendations. We said we would come back with some recommendations and outlines at a workshop. And last month, we actually came out with recommendations that were brought to you on HVAC air handling systems. So we're making progress on some of those things. So this kind of shows you in a graphical way how we're spending the ESSER money year by year. So you can see the first ESSER funds we're spending first, then the ESSER 2, and then ESSER 3 will be coming later. So I think we do have some plans this year to use up. We used up our ESSER 1 funds already this year. So it was just our last claim was filed. And now we're working through implementing our plans for using ESSER 2. And then ESSER 3, that has a set aside for learning recovery. And we also are setting aside some of that money for facility improvements for the $5 million set aside for the high school, for the HVAC work, some green space work. So some of that, a big chunk of that, almost half, is dedicated for facilities. So these are the top areas of funding. So I just want to make sure when Deidre wants to chime in, if it's now or later. So I'm trying to see the little picture here. Deidre, did you want to add something now? Brandon, if you could switch over.
Okay, I think you can hear me now. Sorry about that. Yeah, so Mark, I'll add something towards the end. So I put some real specific things that align to the goals that we set out, and just the new structure we're using around, we set some priority areas for the money based on the surveys and the things that we had asked for input on from the board and from community members and from staff. And then we set some really specific goals around each of those areas so that we could come back to our board and say, okay, so we decided to dedicate X amount of dollars to this particular goal, and then it has a measurement in it, so we can come back and report on how we're doing on some of those goals. So I'll briefly share a bit of that towards the end.
So the top areas of funding in the total amount of ESSER funding is facility improvements. We did put quite a bit of funding towards technology, student technology. So that's been an excellent boost to the district for getting that technology infused into the district. Learning recovery is a fairly large set aside, and Deidre's working on that plan. And I don't know if as we speak is the right term, but they are diligently working on that plan. We have this thing that it's not a concept that we would like to set aside funds for financial stability. And that's about $3 million. The concept of that would be to free up funds we can buy down debt, and which would lower our district debt service for several years. So it would be a multi-year help to our financial situation. We were worried about spending the money on something that adds to our base, and then when the money goes away, we'd have to figure out how to pay for it. This is actually flips the whole concept by saying we're going to use it to buy down debt, and it'll stabilize us for many years. Supplies and cleaning equipment, all that was quite a bit of an investment. Online learning, and then we did some other things like pupil transportation and mental health services and staff training and instructional support. So ESSER 1, this was the breakdown. You could see it was mostly pandemic support, supplies, contact tracing. We bought some of the technology, and we had, I think we supported some additional staff that was needed in those initial years. And the needs met, I have that list that was supplied to you in November, where we met our technology needs, support staff, emotional needs, summer school, and some building needs.
I had a question quick. I'm sorry. Do we still have those health roommates that we had hired? No, we don't. Okay, just one.
Then ESER two, we went over there and things changed a little bit, but you can see it's about $6 million, but we're proposing to use about half of that to provide financial stability by buying down debt. So what we might do is instead, we can't use ESER money to pay for debt, but we can use it to pay for the supplies and pay for staff, and that frees up money to buy down debt. So, but these are some of the categories that we did. There's updated curriculum, pandemic support. We're using contact tracers. There's a number of things that were done with the ESER two money. And then ESER three, oh, and this is the new plan that I talked about. So at the financial stability. And then ESER three, we haven't quite gotten into expending that. And this is the plan that's in development, but a lot of that money is set aside for facility improvement. But if you can see in the upper right-hand corner, there's a significant chunk of that pie for learning recovery. So that's what the fine work that Deidre is working on with her team, Learning Recovery Initiative. We have curriculum we're thinking about. She has a number of initiatives that we will use these ESSER funds for that. And we're also saving some money, reserve funds, because we don't know if we're going to have another wave, or is there going to be some other need that comes up in a couple of years. So we have some reserve funds, but it also will be made available for probably likely go into the learning recovery category to implement plans for the district. So the next steps, we have a number of focus areas that we have that Deidre was working on. This is probably the things she wants to start talking about.
Yep.
And maybe I should let her chime in now. This is her turn.
Okay. So we tried to break apart what, again, like I said earlier, the feedback that we got from the community, from what we're seeing as far as reviewing the data, from what we're seeing as far as what is happening in schools right now, to really say, okay, we have 4 kind of big areas when it comes to what we want to make sure that the dollars are associated to. And the first one is academic achievement and growth for each student, right? And so some of what we've done already to address some of that are continuing to add resources for our physical education staff, new equipment, new ways to engage kids in more physical activity. We have 2 new supplementary math resources that we're trying out right now that are intended to work on identifying some really specific skills that kids are needing to develop and give them additional opportunities to practice. And then our art team also is looking at some new and additional resources, again, trying to find ways to continually do our cross-curricular work and engage our staff. We previously made some purchases through ESSER 1 and ESSER $2 that were new resources for 612 science, new resources for 612 social studies, a piece of the 4K through 5th grade ELA resource was spent out of ESSER 1 and ESSER 2. And so to keep moving forward, we'll continue to look at the resources that we're using, make sure that they are up to date, make sure that they also come with a ton of embedded professional development. We've now done workshops around math wholeness, which is really looking at how gaps get created in math from that holistic view of a student as a mathematician, K through 12. So all teachers have now participated in our math wholeness workshop, and that is leading to some very rapid growth with our 612 team around understanding where they could be doing more project-based work in math, aligning math courses at the high school level so that they make a little bit more sense strategically for students, and then as well as designing some of those learning recovery plans for our students that have really struggled for the last year and a half. So a ton of that work got launched with our math wholeness workshop, and then that continues. We revamped summer school last summer. We're revamping summer school slightly again this summer, and really making summer school far more exploratory. So the elementary students will have a series of courses they can take, a first section course and a second section course, and then they can choose to add on a reading booster or a math booster to the start or end of the courses. And the coursework for summer school will look a lot more like what you saw tonight in the workshop. So we'll have page to stage, where we'll use some of our our new Scholastic ELA resource in the Fairy Tales unit to help kids design that page to stage experience. We'll have one on robotics, we'll have one on Lego exploration, all of those pieces through summer school. Middle school summer school is going to be a series of project-based learning units that students can sign up for. One will be a renovate the school in some way, shape, or form, similar to if anybody saw Jordan's beautiful work with the team at Franklin last year to make their learning space. So one of the sections for summer school will be something like that. One is going to be rocket launching. So I'll let everybody know when we're actually going to do that because I'm really excited to go watch that one myself. And a bunch of other things that actually came from students. So we've been asking students and asking staff, what would you want to teach in the summer? What would students actually sign up to do and take in the summer that would make a difference for them? And then, as you saw tonight through our project-based learning work, we really focus on bringing the standards. You know, always start with the standard, and the standard the student's going to master. They just master it in a different way than taking a test or something like that. And then we will have a presentation of learning at the end of summer school that people will be invited to. And then we went on to focus area 2, which is really more around some of the life readiness preparation. So that's where our continued support, we've used a chunk of ESSER monies right now on the partnership we have with our team from Blue Dot Education. So most of the schools you saw tonight have been in trainings with Blue Dot, actually all of the schools you saw tonight have been in training with Blue Dot Education around doing these public demonstrations of learning and ensuring that projects are more than just doing something interesting, that they're tied to standards, that they're about the student finding their way in the classroom and finding ways to connect. So that's a big portion of what we're doing for life readiness. As of right now, the portfolios that will launch in the fall for K through 12th grade, we're getting very excited about that project, which will also serve as our profile of a graduate. Won't require additional dollars from ESSER, but it is nice that we have some flexibility, as Mark said at the start, if we need it, to add some time in the summer for staff to really get familiar with that so we can launch that work just right. And then the next focus area was around student belonging and well-being. So with previous dollars, we added 2 social workers, but some of the ESSER 3 funding allows us to keep those social workers for the additional couple of years. We are working on adding another school psychologist. They're a bit hard to find, but we are working really hard to add another school psychologist to our team. We added the Hope Squad work that some of you have seen 612 to elementary schools, to 4 elementary schools. Right now, a chunk of that is funded through the mental health grant that we were a competitive grant from DPI that we were successful in receiving. But we also have opportunities to add to that with using some of our ESSER monies. We have used some ESSER monies and will continue to use some ESSER 3 monies. When a staff member takes the micro-credential around embedding SEL in the classroom, a lot of what you heard Walker talking about tonight, and a couple of our other schools, when they take that as a micro-credential, sort of the parting gift or the graduation present, I guess, from that micro-credential is the actual curriculum. And it's rather expensive. You know, there's anywhere from $400 to $600 a kit. But then that teacher gets that resource to use in their classroom all of the time, checked out to them, that we then get back at the end of, you know, should they retire or something like that. But this is allowing us to purchase more of those kits and get the resources in the hands of our teachers that they need. Some of the ESSER dollars will continue to be used for our youth advisors. We have now a training program for our youth advisors so that they all get trained in restorative practices, so that they are really ready to do that mentorship that we need them to be doing in our schools and helping kids that are still struggling with some of those learning connections to get reconnected back to school. And then the last one is something that will happen in March. As I think I shared with our board before, Adam and myself, as well as a team from DACI, got selected in a pretty competitive process to present at the Deeper Learning Conference. But they are doing a lot of work around deeper learning and SEL. So Nick Burr, our lead counselor, Laura Sage, our lead school psych, and Larry Lineberger, our lead social worker, are all coming to that conference with us to attend so that we can be sure when we're doing the student supports that they actually are directly tied to some of those academic outcomes that are part of our plan. And then the last one is just on that preparedness and response, like Mark talked about. Some of this will continue to work with our safety team and building that sense of safety at school and doing things that just are physically safe, as well as continue to work on air quality and cleaning mitigation practices that we've increased the kind of cleaning and some of the cleaning that we've been doing, and we want to make sure we can continue funding those pieces. And that was it for me,
Lot of
unless
work
anyone
that's
has any
going on
questions.
with this. There is one other plan that will be needed to be updated now that you've just changed the mask policy. That we'll have to update the safe return to in-person instruction and continuity of services plan. That all needs to be aligned with the ESSER plan that we have to do. So now we get to update that, and then at some point, I assume that'll be brought back to the board as well. So there's quite a bit of work and planning going on with ESSER, and hopefully that provides you a good snapshot of that.
Questions?
Will we need to be voting on anything specific to this, or was it just a simple update? Or less than simple, I guess.
So I don't believe there's a requirement that the board votes for it. We do embed the ESSER funding into the budget. So in some respects, you're voting part of those plans. We will have some of these concepts of budget updates. If we're doing debt payment reduction, the board will vote for the debt adjustments and some of the budget adjustments. So, I'm not sure if the preparedness plan does need, this plan that I just talked about needs board approval or not, but we're checking to make with DPI to see if that will be needed.
Is there some, potential communication around our scores in relationship to what we're going to be using these ESSER funds for? Because I think a concern for a lot of people is like, we're behind, bottom 10%, this and that. I think it'd be really positive to kind of have a little bit of a game plan on some immediate, low hanging fruit that we can kind of show that we're trying to make those improvements sooner rather than later.
So Deidre and I actually can email back and forth a couple times today. She's nodding. On that, so kind of a bulleted version of the list of all of the things we've been doing to help students get back on track. So yeah, I think it's time to maybe formalize that a little bit. And I think one of the other big messages we want to weave into that is, the message around pre-COVID that we had moved from, similar circumstance to, 8 schools that exceeded expectations on the school report card. So that the message there is we know how to do this. The unfortunate part is we have to do it again. And so I think we can get back on track, but there's a lot on that list. So yeah.
And I will.
Finalize that. Maybe that becomes, Friday update out to the community.
There's like some really shiny object we can provide that we're working towards helping us with this type of stuff. I think would go a long way to show that we're serious about improving this in a fast manner.
Yeah, and we'll have also the Fast Bridge data. I think we'll start to put some numbers behind that our observations that things are improving. So Deidre, I don't know if you want to jump in.
Yeah, I was just going to mention, Marty, that the first.
Brandon, you want to switch?
Can you hear me now? Yes. Okay. So yeah, that's what I was just going to mention, Marty, is the Fast Bridge data, the first round of that. So we did it in the fall to get a new baseline. We were, MAPS was being somewhat inconsistent data for us because we had done it a number of times in a number of different situations. So we switched to Fast Bridge, and we will have our first set of data to report on that. And that should be very, very soon here as we just finished the winter session, and then we'll do that again in the spring. And teams are working right now on just some different preparedness for forward exam and ACT prep than we had the time to do last year, given the fact that some of that testing happened days after we returned to in-person learning. So it was really hard to adjust to moving from virtual to in-person learning, then also doing our state assessments in the midst of all of that. So we're just really being much more strategic this year around not running test prep courses, but making sure that our students, part of that public demonstration of learning is becoming assessment capable, meaning they show what they know when you ask them to show what they know, whatever the audience. And so making sure that our students are translating those skills to more formalized assessments is some of the plans that the schools are working on now.
Other questions or comments? All right, well, thank you very much for giving us these two updates. And we look forward to hearing more once we have some more information. So if there's nothing else, I'd look for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to approve, or I'm sorry. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.